here we have the place on fire with there are cars from the occupation personnel that are set on fire here. Across the way is the occupation headquarters, and of course, here's the Imperial Palace, and there's the plaza swathed in smoke. And so here's the image of the non-event, the spectacular guillotine that brings together all of these things that are present but also not photographable, historical legacies, the immediate context of the short story, the assassination, and if you want to borrow this from me, that's fine. I have this image available for you if you like. Yeah. I think it's important. How the hell do you collect it? But it's also important because it's part of a mix that triggers a kind of turnaround in some artist practice. I mean, you know how artists work. They do these works, and it's often very intuitive, and they're exposed to all kinds of things, and you get these moments of sometimes of theorization, of reorientation, of discussion. And we're kind of lucky to have some of these moments recorded thanks to that radical magazine, Kesha, or Image. You can actually track the moment that people get involved in a discourse of direct action. So I want to talk about this. So there's a round table, and they talk about both that non-event and then this other event that did happen. This event, around the Yamanote-sen, around the Yamanote train line, this vaguely circular train line in Tokyo, and this is a sort of semi-map of stations starting in Shinagawa and heading up. And of course, there's a hole burned in the middle of the invitation here, and none of this is to scale or location wise is quite accurate, but you could think of this as sort of the imperial center to Tokyo. Certainly, Bart thought about that as the case. And we have an invitation text, which I've translated for you here, and you don't have to read it now, but we can just for a second here pause and think about this. Well, let me read a little bit, and rather quickly. A storage locker filled with interpretations and definitions, the facial expressions of the multitude, useful things indiscriminately made, ready smilers, practical people, the crown prince, broken toys, gears, mainsprings, eggs, bone, hair, the various coquetries of tedious women, tableware, books, utterly artificial interiors and exteriors, words, characters, and to continue to write this list would require all the paper in the world. All meld together, become fluid, and begin to drift about. From there, they free themselves of their original shapes, both presenting themselves for the purpose of, and flowing into new convenient molds, being born again. And ought we to ask what sort of molds these are? In this meaningless present, we are impelled with the desire to swim about in this fluid, agitate, and make it a void. From this void, we must persistently attempt work that will give birth to a new pure interaction. There is a collective body of things, an aggregate, that refuse to rest contented within these constructions, and attempt to be a point within this void that the fluid is pregnant with. As the moment of contraction and dispersion by this collective body unfolds, it moves about the circle drawn at the right, Yamanote said. Should you happen to come across this collective body in the circle, at the points fixed on the circle, at the times listed at the right, you will perhaps become a molecule agitated within this void, have your individuality wiped away, and collapse into the indistinguishable crucible of you, me, us, and matter. Or should you be the type of person who favors hats, you could become the medium for facilitating this collective body's constricting, agitating movement. Nakanishi was surprised to discover that people had a hard time figuring out what he was on about. He wrote this. It was surprising that this was not immediately transparent. They handed out the invitation at the time to people on the trains, and as well as sending it to a bunch of artists and also some people randomly from the phone book. You can maybe guess from here, though, why I like using Rancière and trying to talk about this stuff. But anyway, let's take a look at what the heck they were doing. The event starts with them boarding kind of separately in train cars, at which point one of them puts on this white face paint and then walks over to Nakanishi, who's dressed, like everybody else here. There's a salaryman. Puts white paint on him, and it begins. Here's a compact object or portable object because it's got a whole board in it so that it can hang from one of these straps.
Which we also own, by the way.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And he did a variety of things: the shining the flashlight on, the careful fondling. A number of these artists do a number of different events on the cars, on the platforms. Here we have Takamatsu, who's dragging together with Nakanishi his rope or himo, which is studded with different kinds of sort of mini objet. There's the portable object being licked, and I think it's had some eggs broken up on it. Anyway, this was their maneuver. I've got some other images too we can look at if you care, but it becomes unbearable. It becomes unbearable for Nakanishi. The tension mounts, and eventually he just sprints out of there, as he says. I just completely lost track of it and stopped understanding what was going on. So I said, "Let's get the hell out of here!" and ran out at Ueno. They were supposed to go all the way around the circular line, but he only made it to Ueno. And here they are packing up outside the Tokyo Bunkakaikan.
So how many stops would that have been?
About 4 or 5, I think, is what they got out of it.
And do you have a sense of what became unbearable? Was it the lack of response, or
No. People were. I mean, if you look, you got all kinds of response. The response became an issue because as it progressed, this is we've got a photographer's image, right? Well, it's very handy and it's nice to look at, but that means there's a guy with a camera right here. And the further it went on, the more people with cameras showed up. And, this is not the time when, now everybody knows what a happening is. Everybody, if you see something weird happening on the street, you've got a few standard categories. Okay, schizophrenic, artist schizophrenic, but it doesn't sort of stop you in your tracks in the way that I think a performance in Japan in October of 1962 would. But there's a third category, and it started to resolve as more and more photographers came, and that is, hey, is this a movie, or is this some sort of, film event, or, the presence of photographers makes it safe. It makes it recorded, but it transforms the thing. There's a Heisenberg problem here, if you will. The observation kind of transforms the event. I like Takamatsu, by the way, reading the newspaper while holding on to the objet. But there really was a kind of, or was supposed to be a kind of dramatization of you may be next. I mean, Nakanishi doesn't put that paint on himself. Geyser gets up and and so and some of the other people on the train sort of covertly watching what was going on thought that people were getting nervous that they might be the next people getting the treatment. But this was supposed to be part of what was happening because this is the time period in which these high-rise apartments are going up, the Danshi, and people are spending more and more time in these commuting spaces. These are strange spaces. You're not at leisure. There's no texting or anything going on. You're just sitting on the train. You're not at work. You're not at leisure. It's what Lefebvre calls compulsory time. Well, it's also a place where you're in close proximity, and anything can happen. And it's not just in Japan, and not just these artists who get very interested in trains and platforms and spaces of commuting as these sort of null spaces that can maybe be seized and taken up and repurposed, and maybe rethought politically in some way, or become a space for rewriting things, which I think is part of what Nakanishi was trying to get at with that density of sort of all these things swirling together. And the movement's very important for him too.